It is time for another episode of the Cultural Hall. It is an Articles of News episode, making sure that he's got the one chain on. He does, in fact. It is Taylor One Chain Westbrook. Thank you for co-hosting this news. We are doing a bunch of news. As I was out of town, I felt like I just continuously behind as far as everything goes. And so when I got back to town, one of the first things I did is I reached out to all the co-hosts and I said, hey, would you like to do news? And all of them said, yes, I would. So rather than, just be like, hey, I've already got someone for news. I'll catch you next week. What I instead said was, yeah, let's do it. Whoever gets in touch with me first gets first dibs on stories, etc. So that's how that went down. And the old one chain is who this episode is with. Now, right before we turn on the microphone, a couple things going on. One, Taylor has bought a microphone, which is great. It reminds me that if you do not subscribe to the Cultural Hall on YouTube, you need to go and see it and watch the most recent Temple Ticker. I think it's the one it's the one right after General Conference, where we have a new microphone for the Pharoah, but the microphone boom arm and his table don't cooperate, and so you can watch him sort of like slinking down and trying to keep it up with his head. It's the episode itself well worth it. The entertainment value of the microphone stand worth checking out the YouTube. And of course, while you're there, click subscribe. Even if you don't watch things on YouTube, typically it helps the algorithm and it puts us in a place where pretty soon we can start monetizing things. Will we make a bunch? No, we won't. Will it help? Yes, it will. So go and subscribe there. And then second, you said, I think I'm in the same ward as the Pharoah. How big is this ward that you wouldn't be like, hey, Corey K. Ward, Taylor One Chain Westbrook, we work on a thing. Why is that happening? That makes no sense to me.
Well, hold on. I might have been wrong because what I remember, so I didn't like see him at church or anything like that. So he might be inactive. We might want to check up on him.
Okay.
But I'm 90% sure I saw him come up in our ward Facebook group,
Okay.
but I just checked and he's not in there. So maybe he just moved. I have
Mm.
no idea. I might have been completely wrong. So yeah.
Ward
You're
hopping.
welcome. You're welcome for completely wasting your time with that little tidbit.
One of the most eligible bachelors, Corey K. Ward. Now you want a
Hmm.
dynamic duo. You want a little bit of flavor of everything. Let's get a couple ladies to double date Corey K. Ward and Taylor One Chain Westbrook. That is an evening I would be a part of in a heartbeat.
We'll record it and we'll upload it to the Cultural Hall channel.
Yes. Oh my gosh. That and that's not speaking anything about either of you guys, but could I find two more different people? Probably not. And then to put them with where opposites normally attract in a relational partner or a dating partner, to put the four of whomever you are in a room together, I would just want to sit and be like, what is everyone thinking right now?
That sounds pretty good. We need a new YouTube series on this.
Done.
We'll
Done.
hit up Corey and see what he thinks.
Yeah, I can tell you what he thinks. I want to hit a quick email. This from Chris. He says, you guys need a host named Melody who wears no chains and introduce them as Unchained Melody. And then Chris says, I'll see myself out. Unchained
Wow.
Melody is, a very popular song. That's the Unchained Melody part of it.
I
I
really like that he
appreciated
took
it,
the time
Chris.
to write that email.
Yep. He says, you're welcome, or I'm sorry, Chris. So I appreciate that. That came in. Other emails that I need to address. This from Tyler. Tyler is a Canadian. He says, nothing gets me more revved up and excited to be a listening participant of the Cultural Hall than your political takes, Richie. I love them. Keep them up. We need more loud voices like yours, and I'm not even American. A faithful, intelligent voice with strong opinions is what is needed in the church. I recently got changed into the calling of advisor and the young men's, and what I really miss from being an elders quorum teacher is shaking the notion of the core members that we all think the same, that we all have the exact same beliefs. It makes people think, and that's what's good. Keep it up with the good stuff. So thank you to Tyler.
And I'm
And
sure
then,
everyone who listens agrees that they love your political takes. I'm
yeah,
sure that
yeah,
not a
everyone
single listener disagrees
same
with you.
page. Oh
Hmm.
wait, there's another me email. Travis. Travis says, couple things I believe that you're missing on the issue. The past few years under the previous administration, there was a multitude of people who entered the country with no documentation and the wrong way. Sure, I get that, Travis. I agree with you. The current administration is trying to right the situation as best they can by removing people who are not citizens and have committed crimes. I'm also on board with you so far. I would assume every situation has some issues that are different and are likely, I hope, dealt with as fairly as possible, and that's where you lost me, Travis. That they're dealt with fairly as possible, and that calm mind, greater minds prevail is where I take issue with what you said, Travis. Yes, I hope that as well. I don't believe that is the case necessarily. The other point is the stories being reported are high drama, sure, and they're meant to capture and create drama, sure. That's all this story is. Another way to create drama, fear, and division. You bit and contributed, Travis. All right. On that point, Travis, if you don't say something when you see something, then there will be a point when saying something doesn't matter. That saying something has no effect. That saying something is a shout in the void. And so you have to, if you see something, I actually listened to a really great podcast. The most recent Mormon Land podcast is with Molly Bonner. Do you know who that is, Taylor?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he did an opinion piece, and actually I'm thinking about bringing him in an episode of the Cultural Hall. He, as I understand it, I haven't seen this, but apparently he's written an op-ed for the Salt Lake Tribune that's like 10 ways to check yourself before you wreck yourself in regards to racism and racism within the church specifically. And one of the things that he talked about that has stuck in my brain since I listened to it, granted it's only been a couple hours, ADD brain, but one of the things that he said is when you hear something, particularly he's speaking about racism, but I think that this transcends beyond this. But when you see something or hear something and you know, oh, that's not right, you have to say something to it, because otherwise, and I had never considered this before. If I don't say something racist is in the room, and the person who that racism was directed towards, that essentially puts that person in a position of like, oh, everyone must agree with that person because no one is speaking up against it. And that to me feels terribly wrong. Will always speak out, always have to say something. It doesn't mean that you have to agree always with the other person. It doesn't mean that you even know the right words to say, because I guarantee in my rant about immigration, sure, I said a lot of stuff that was whatever, but I had a problem with it and needed to speak up about it. And I think more people need to be able to speak up about things. Otherwise, we're going to find ourselves in a world of like, they're just trying to divide, so I'm not going to say anything. Now, where are we? In a world where we can't do anything about it.
Now, was Travis's email in response to the story about the BYU student and their? Okay, there's an update on that we'll hear in a future episode because it was dibsed by another co-host. But
oh, it's already out. That episode is out and live. It is out and live now.
Fair
so
enough,
people, yeah, and short in case you haven't heard that one, his visa got reinstated like it was never revoked to begin with. You know, the way that it should have been. So. All to say, though, and what I messaged back to Travis was, I'm happy to have a conversation with you. I think we need to have conversations with you and other folks as well. But the fact that his visa was ever revoked or in danger of being revoked is ridiculous. Amen. And then let's see here. I think that's probably it for right now. I'm going to do this thing. You'll appreciate this. And then I want to know what's going on with you. I'm sorry I'm talking so much. I had a lot of energy drink for lunch. I'm going to start doing a thing where, so when you contact at theculturalhall.com, it sends me an email, right? And I'm really like, I'm obsessed about the empty email inbox. Like one of my emails that I regularly use, I leave at a 0. There's no emails in there, because I use it as a checklist of like things to do, whatever. That has not been the case with the contact at theculturalhall.com. So marrying both the idea that I've never done a solo episode and that I am horrible sometimes about responding to emails, we're going to start doing episodes called The repentance of old emails, and I'm going to go back as far as the emails go to emails that I should have addressed a long time ago and do like 4 or 5 emails in an episode. On episode 391, you said, okay, guys, so let me tell you what this is. Like, that's my plan until I get caught up as far as emails go. So,
I love that because there are a couple emails from me that went unresponded from you but
yeah,
way before I even joined as a co-host. So
right. So we'll
I'm excited to be answered finally.
Yeah, yes. And I think that for those people that may have gone away from the cultural hall or like they just maybe they forgot or they got caught in one of the windows where I'm not very good about publishing stuff, I think that that can be a way to bring people back. And I think it's interesting to go, what in the world is this even talking about? I have no idea. And it'll bring about some other great episodes that I should have done. All to say, I'm sorry to everyone who I don't reply to when you send it. Now, I'll say this: I don't always written reply to everyone. If I address like Travis's email on the show, like I just did, even though I wrote him a response, I would consider what we just did a response to him, and so I
Right.
wouldn't maybe necessarily write him. So anyway, all to say. Repentance of old emails, solo episodes of the Cultural coming up. What's new with you besides having fantastic hair?
Thank you.
And your hairline is great too.
For now, I
Well,
don't know
well,
how it's gonna go.
so
There's some go ahead.
I was just going to ask you because I see this in like barbering movies, and if this is anything, call me out on it. But do you do the hard razor uh
Like a
hairline
lineup?
like I see?
Like a lineup? Yeah.
I don't know. I don't even know what it's called.
Yeah, it's a line. Well, you're talking about like your barber goes and does like the hard. Yeah, yeah. My
Yeah,
barber, he does that. Love
they
my
call
barber.
it a lineup.
He's lineup. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, I get that done every time I get my hair cut. Down here, down the sideburn too, and everything. And he's great. I've been using the same barber. It's hard to find here in Utah a barber that can cut black hair well. So
Yeah.
I found him 8 years ago, and I had to get one haircut while I was down in Peru, and I
Oh,
didn't. Wasn't my favorite, but other than that, don't worry, Mike. I've been loyal. eight
he hasn't
years.
cheated on you, Mike. He just didn't have an option. He left
Exactly.
to Peru for several months. Can I ask something? Again, I don't know why I'm so cautious around this, but is a lineup a white people thing? Could I go and get a lineup, or would they look at me and go, What is happening? Why are you doing
So
this?"
I guess I'm confused. So does your barber not do that?
Like a straight razor at the
Well,
line?
I guess on the forehead maybe not, but I'm sure they shape it here on the sides, right?
Yeah, they use like the zzz and
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
go around. Sure, but I'm
Uh-huh.
talking
Like
when
a
I'm
straight razor.
addressing this to you, I'm talking like straight razor and
Uh-huh.
like on your forehead.
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
what
Yeah, you could definitely ask
should
for a
I be
lineup for
laughed out
sure.
of my barber? My barber? Like
No,
what? Who is this guy?
no.
Appropriation? Is that what this is?
No, really anybody who gets a fade, usually they're gonna get a lineup as well. So yeah,
Okay.
that's not a strict cultural line
Okay.
by any means.
Okay.
No, you're good.
All right. Good. Then I'm gonna do it just for the sake of looking at the person at Dollar Cuts or wherever I get my hair cut.
Uh-huh.
Can I get
They
a
might not know they might not know what it is, but
no? No. They definitely they look at me and go, yeah, it's all right. He does the best he can. He's gonna
Mhm.
put a hat on as soon as he leaves. What else is new with you?
Let's see, not a ton. Still adjusting to being back home. I'm living in Orem now,
Hmm.
which is just terrible. Just kidding, Utah County. I love you so much. Yeah, I'm much more accustomed to Solid County, but I'm getting adjusted. Um, as you probably know, I do my daily walks, and I've got some new places to walk, which is nice. A little bit of an exciting news. Still on the search for like a more stable job, but I did kind of make a little career move this week that I'm excited about, where I am now a certified travel agent,
There you go.
and kind of on the side, I'm gonna kind of be growing this travel business, planning travel for people. I've always loved traveling, but the last like 7 or 8 months really have really solidified how much I love travel and
Mhm.
enjoy it, and so yeah. Look forward to more. I'm just getting started, getting through training and stuff like that. So, but look forward to that. And
Will you be
yeah,
working for a company?
Sort of. I'll be like an independent contractor working through a larger travel agency, but I'll kind of be like running my own thing through it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to go to Peru again for a couple months. It's for work.
Oh no. Yeah,
Yeah.
that will be a big part of it too. Will be, they do these what do they call them? Familiarization trips where
Sure.
sometimes agencies will reach out like, "Hey, come to our resort." so you can learn what it's like. I'll absolutely do that.
Yeah, of
No
course.
hesitation. Yeah,
I feel like though, just like a realtor, just like a wedding DJ, just like a wedding photographer, there are lots of people who want to do these things. And so like I feel like the pool of it is pretty big, right? And fairly shallow as far as the people go. But like the people that are really good, like there are not nearly as many of those people. The people that are
that's fair.
really good and excel at that. So that's exciting. I hope that that's you. It will be you.
I hope so. And what's nice is, now with social media kind of being the main driver as far as like booking travel and things like that, outside of like your immediate circle of family and friends,
Sure.
is that, it's just whoever can hustle the most to get out there in social media and get engagement. So it's not, I think before it was kind of, if you were in a city that was really saturated with, travel agents, it might be hard to kind of break through, but
Sure.
we'll see how it goes. Like
There you
I
go.
said, it's kind of more of a, for now, it's more of the goal of it being kind of a side hustle, nights and weekends until I get it rolling. But
Yeah.
I'll keep you guys updated.
Yeah. The kids love Disney. The Mormon
Hmm.
kids love Disney.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do.
And everyone sort of caters to that. But if you could do a different sort of thing, I'd
Hmm.
buy.
Like Peru.
Yeah, like Peru Disney.
Peru Disney. Yep. I'll start my own
Yes,
theme park in
your own
Peru.
theme
That's
park.
an amazing idea.
See, it's the low-hanging fruit that people just don't consider. Uh, we have a lineup, an order of news that we will actually get to. Let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to do actual articles of news. Let me take just a moment to tell you all about bestdjinutah.com. That is the website where you can learn all about me. Oh, sure, you probably feel like you know me, but you know me in the cultural hall sense. I have a DJ company now, 6 of us strong, great event hosts, MCs, and DJs that can be able to make whatever event you have coming up absolutely spectacular, and hope you will reach out to us. Now you're thinking, well, wait a minute, Richie, I don't live in Utah. Would you travel? Absolutely, I would travel. Would they travel? Absolutely, they would travel. Whatever your event is, doesn't have to be a wedding or a community event. We can do all sorts of things. I can teach you line dancing. I can dance with you. We can do partner dancing. We can do all kinds of things, but we can't do any of it if you don't hit me up. You can go to bestdjinutah.com. You can fill out the form to get more information or get a quote, and then I will get right back to you. Find out why I'm so busy and why sometimes we don't get episodes of the Cultural Hall. It's all because of bestdjinutah.com. Here in the second half of Articles of News, we do actual articles of news. So why don't you go and hit it, Peter?
You can't lose articles of news.
And away we go. Breaking news, moments before we turned on these microphones. Do you want to do the sports story breaking news and let me do the other one, or do you want to do the other one and you do the sports breaking news?
I'll go ahead and do the sports breaking news.
Do it.
Breaking news here is that Jimmer Fredette has retired from basketball. I'm sure everyone has heard his name. Way back in the 2010-2011 season, he became a star at BYU. During his time at BYU, he averaged 28.9 points per game in that season, I should say, leading the country on his way to being the AP Player of the Year. He had game highs or season highs of 70 and 75 points during his career. Oh, sorry, that was during his career in China. My mistake. Those
Come on,
high
sports
scoring games.
statistics people love this.
My bad, my bad. But yeah, so he was a huge college player, and then career didn't quite pan out in the NBA. He was the number 10 pick in the 2011 NBA draft to Milwaukee, and then during his 6 seasons in the NBA, he was with Sacramento, New Orleans, Chicago, Phoenix, and New York, and then went on to play internationally in China and Greece. Really went off in China. I remember that. It was kind of like everyone had kind of forgot about Jimmer a little bit, and then all of a sudden he was all over the news in China, scoring those super high scoring games, and was the MVP in the Chinese Basketball Association in 2017. Then he kind of pivoted, which was interesting, to the 3-on-3 format, which has kind of been growing and growing with Ice Cube's league and it being in the Olympics and such.
Mhm.
And going into the Paris Olympics, he was the top ranked 3-on-3 men's basketball player, and the USA team was ranked number 2. And then shortly into the tournament, he got injured
Right.
in his adductor muscle, which left the USA team with no substitutes, just 3 guys fighting on through that tournament. So didn't quite pan out the way he thought that it would. But really, I mean, did not have a traditional NBA career by any means. Didn't really reach the heights that everyone thought he would, but still an amazing career, and kind of crazy to think that it's been, I mean, now it's been 15 years since we started really hearing about Jimmer, and now he's finally done.
You know what's wild to me that we have not spoken about, that I've not seen any sort of reference to? In the season with Jimmer Fredette, there was a basketball player named Brandon Davies. Do you know about this?
I know the name, yeah.
Played in the same year on the same team, and as we were getting, I think, towards the tournament, some of this is sort of shady in my mind, but they kicked him off the team.
Oh, yeah.
This was right
Okay.
before the tournament started for breaking
Yeah.
the honor code.
Hmm.
And so the team that year, I think, was like 27-2, just like a phenomenal record. Jimmer, crazy great. And then Brandon was broke the honor code, having sex with his girlfriend, and they kicked him off the team. And everyone went, "Wait, what? He's this phenomenal
Yeah.
player. He's gone on to play overseas as well. He actually is still playing, not retired. So take that, Jimmer Fredette."
Uh-huh.
No, not really. But it's interesting to me that like that was the big thing. That was the big season. We only made it that far, but we've never sort of referenced back to it. Jimmer went on and and his NBA career was not what he thought, and then what? But I have never heard anyone mention this guy,
Brandon Davies.
Brandon Davies.
There are these weird stories that just kind of, for whatever reason, they don't really take hold in the social lexicon, and they just kind of fly under the radar. But, I'm sure he's happy with, having a long career and maybe not as much publicity, or maybe he does want the publicity. I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah, but it's just fascinating to me that we talk about that season as like Jimmer was the man, but we don't talk about how because of our adherence to the honor code, making that how people would be eligible, that we don't talk about it. And I think maybe it's because we don't want to put like extra shame or anything like that
Yeah.
on him for doing that. And I don't think we should, to be clear. But what a pivotal decision for his life, for the team, for all of the things to go. It's about to be March Madness. We know that you did this. We're gonna have to have you not be on the team. Interesting fact that I found out just as we've been talking because my mind got stuck on that. He married his now wife, obviously, Lindsay Quist. They have a daughter that was born just about 8 or 9 years ago, and he's played for the Ugandan basketball team, which I think is
Nice.
interesting. Yeah. So certainly has turned out to be just fine. Team great. He played on Team Fredette at the basketball tournament on ESPN.
Okay, so it sounds like they're still friends. That's
Yeah,
good.
so they are still friends, but it's a fascinating thing that I have not heard anyone speak about since March 3rd, 2011, when they said, "Hey, he's not going to be able to play." So there you
Well,
go.
there you go. Now we have.
Now I did. Now here's the other breaking news. We talked about this in an articles of news a couple weeks ago about the Cienega High
Mhm.
School. I believe this is down in Arizona, Vail, Arizona. I mistakenly thought it was Colorado. Sue me. The church was going to build a seminary building there on the property of the high school. And there was a couple issues at play. One is that it was a religious institution on public lands. And two, well, so I guess like the mixing of church and state. And then two is that the church, that is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, does not have the same um, like vetting
Vetting. Yeah.
structure as public education in Arizona. And so they were worried about the people that could be teaching, instructing, working in that building that is on the same campus essentially as this high school. And so, breaking news as of just a few minutes before we started recording, the church, that is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, has canceled an agreement with Vail Unified School District to build an LDS seminary on their campus. After meeting with the church, widely known as the Mormon Church, earlier this week, receiving formal written notice from the church indicating their decision to exercise their contractual right to terminate the agreement, the school board unanimously approved building the seminary in March. It was supposed to be a 1,300 square foot classroom set to be completed by January of 2026. The church would have allowed use to the building from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. on weekdays for 10 years. They would have donated the funds to build the room, and it would have come at no cost to taxpayers. So they would have built the building. The agreement drew criticism over the separation of church and state and from some parents, etc. So that breaking news, there will not be that seminary building on their campus. And to me, that just seems to make sense. It's unfortunate that those release time students, because there's probably a good handful of them at a school in Arizona,
Yeah.
will now have to continue to do that somewhere else. But we shouldn't have been trying to do that on, first of all, on land owned by someone else. But second of all, it seems to be muddy when we go, yeah, we'll just put that here and lease that here. That's
Yeah.
why in Utah,
It,
at least to my understanding, we build it on land that the church owns that's like adjacent to, the high
the
schools and
school.
middle schools.
Right. They did add a little bit of context. What, and I believe you mentioned it a little bit last time, but it sounds like this was going to be like a community center. So, the church didn't have like exclusive use of it, and they were essentially donating the building with the kind of caveat that like, hey, we get to use this as a seminary building for 10 years. So now I'm curious. I would assume that construction has already started if it was less than a year out from
Right.
completion. So now is there going to be a whole other issue of now what do we do with this building? Now where are the funds going to come from? Because now it will likely come from taxpayer money. So it'll be
Oh, no,
interesting to
let the
know
Mormons
what.
get in there. Never mind. We don't care. We just
Yeah.
don't want to pay for it.
And I wonder if that was known, if people knew that it was like, hey, this is a building that the church is essentially donating and wants use of as well. So, but they'll probably just turn it into I don't know, one of those like garages that's like near the field house where they keep all the football equipment or something like
Keep the
that.
mower in there
Exactly, something like
where
that. Who
Jack
knows?
parks the mower.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, where do you want to go news wise now then?
Let's go with the National Survey of Religious Leaders.
Okay.
This is a recent project from Mark Chavez, who is a professor of sociology at Duke University. So essentially, it's a project using information from a survey fielded in 2019 and 2020, which makes me curious of what the responses are nowadays. Because with
Sure.
some of the topics that they covered, I'm sure it has changed a little bit. But it was a survey of 1,600 religious leaders, including Catholic priests, Jewish rabbis, bishops of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, among others, evangelists, Protestants, essentially asking them myriad
Actually, I
questions
think you
about
have to
different
say
topics.
evangelists and so forth. Isn't that how the song goes?
I don't
Name
know that
the
song.
apostles, prophets, pastors, teachers, evangelists, and so forth. Isn't that one of the Articles of Faith songs?
I don't think I ever learned that one.
Oh, come on. Okay,
Look,
keep
don't
going.
you
Keep
learn the
going with
don't
the
you learn the
news.
article? Okay, okay. So there were there were myriad questions spanning from theological questions to political questions to financial questions. So some of the interesting highlights from it were, for example, the belief among religious leaders about climate change.
Hmm.
So in this survey, it found that around 7 in 10 Black Protestant, Catholic, and mainline Protestant leaders believe that human actions are a major cause of climate change, compared to 22% of evangelical leaders who
Hmm.
say the same. So I'm not necessarily surprised that evangelical leaders disagree with that. I'm kind of surprised by the stark contrast of 70% all the way down to 22%.
Yeah.
So that was an interesting finding from here. This was another interesting one that doesn't quite, well, I don't think we see the same thing within the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, just because of how we're structured. But many religious leaders pointed to declining membership and related financial challenges that are making it more common for religious leaders to serve multiple congregations. So, if you've got a Protestant leader in Salt Lake City, he or she might be serving in two or three congregations, whereas maybe 10 years ago they were serving in just one
Mhm.
because of that declining membership. So that made me think like, wow, well, what would that be like if we got to a point where the bishop had to run two wards
We
or
just
things of
combine the wards, and that
I
is
guess
happening.
I guess that is true. But I mean, not often is it two full wards that end up meeting all together, 400 people in one ward. But I guess that is true. But I think a big part of what I'm saying it's not as prevalent is we also don't have the paid clergy, at least at that level,
Mhm.
the bishop level, where the financial aspect of it would be a concern.
Yeah, I mean, because you in structure for those individuals, like they make money essentially based on how many parishioners are there.
Right.
Not like an overhead organization is like you had 50 people there, here's $100. It's not like that. It's you have 50 parishioners there and you take an offering and you say, "Hey, church costs money to run. Let's go, baby. Come on, bring that in."
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah. Another interesting one that came up was that fewer than one third of religious leaders say that lack of faith is at least moderately likely to cause depression. Um, it's more common that they believe that depression stems from traumatic experiences to chemical imbalances. So I think that is just kind of a sign
Hmm.
of the changing times. As mental health is more understood, the majority of them, um, agree that it's. But I believe that same stat there was a stark difference between other religious leaders and evangelical leaders who a greater majority thought that being depressed had more to do with a lack of faith.
Hmm.
Similarly, politically, now this contrast was, I don't know, just caught me off guard, but in general, evangelical leaders stand out for their political views, with 81% of them identifying as Republican,
Hmm.
compared to 29% of Catholic leaders.
Jeez.
That seems low, but maybe I'm wrong. What do you think?
I mean, I don't know. So essentially, this statistic, if I'm understanding correctly, 29% of Catholic folks consider themselves to be Republican.
Particularly Catholic leaders, because they
Catholic
also talked
leaders
about
can.
how they also talked about how evangelical leaders feel that they are closely aligned with the political stance of their parishioners,
Hmm.
whereas other religious leaders feel that they are more liberal than their congregations typically.
Yeah. So 29% of the Catholic leaders identify as Yeah, that actually I think makes sense to me because I would think
Okay.
maybe well, hold on. Maybe I would think that the leaders would be more liberal within the Catholic Church, or that the parishioners would be more liberal than the leaders, right? The leaders
Uh-huh.
would be like, "Hey, you need to be here. This is the thing that we need to do. This, that, and the other." And the parishioners are like, "Meh,
Yeah.
maybe I don't
That's
need
what
to
you
be
think.
here."
And also, this survey is addressing the leaders specifically. So a leader saying that they feel more liberal doesn't necessarily make it true. But
Yeah,
I thought that was interesting,
yeah,
at the very least, to look at that. Maybe it's because of the Pope who just passed away being a little bit more on the liberal side. I don't know.
yeah.
Well, actually, no. Well, how long was he Pope?
Like a decade.
Okay, yeah. So that would have been during this survey back in 2019. And then
Uh,
the last kind of interesting little tidbit was that 91% of the religious leaders say that they definitely believe in Jesus's bodily resurrection. I just find that interesting.
91%.
Yeah. So it's interesting to know that 9% either aren't sure or there were even a number. I went and read some of these statistics from the full report. Some of them stated that they definitely do not believe in the resurrection. So I thought that was kind of interesting to
Interesting.
see from religious leaders. Yeah. And it went
Uh,
into there were like 100 of these theological questions about believing in the miracles of the Bible, believing that the Bible is, factual events versus.
Literally, this happened, or like, yeah, it's an allegory to teach you a lesson.
Exactly. So there's definitely a subset from a variety of different groups that kind of lean towards that allegory symbolism type of belief system.
To circle back to my song singing, that is
Yep.
the song for the sixth article of faith. Please and thank you. We believe in the same organization that existed in the primitive church. And then this was my favorite part, namely apostles, prophets, pastors, teachers, evangelists, and so forth.
Is this how it was supposed to be sung or just how the
I don't
primary
know.
kids were singing it?
That was me, primary kid. That's
Fair
primary
enough.
kid me. If you can imagine, I was that kid. Can you imagine that?
That seems so strange. I was
Yeah.
I was inactive for most of primary, so I never really learned the
Well, you
articles.
missed hanging out with kids like me.
Oh darn. What a loss.
Okay. I don't need that. I don't need that sarcasm, please and thank you. Where do I want to go? I looked over kind of what you had, and I thought this was sort of an interesting oh thing. We mentioned before about the AI feature that you can do with the handbook. That is, you can search the general handbook of instructions. What used to be a not allowable thing for members of the church at large. You had to be in a leadership position. You can now sort of search it using AI. You got questions about a particular thing. Time-strapped bishops aren't totally off the hook from doing their own homework, though, because the assistant is powered by AI, meaning it can make mistakes. Now, one of the things that I think is interesting is uh, that the upping of the stakes for misuse of personal data. So one of the
Uh-huh.
things that the church has taken a very hard stance at is that you're not supposed to like mass spam your political party to everyone in your stake because you have everyone's email address, or like you're not putting people on a phone tree for the Democratic Party and here's the list. It's not supposed to be used for any of those things. It's for church purposes only. But this has been updated. The current version has a brand new warning aimed at anyone who knowingly inputs false information in church records or who might be tempted to use members' personal data for reasons unrelated to their church calling or volunteer position. Quote, in serious cases, the stake president may counsel with the area presidency about whether a membership council or other action is necessary. Membership councils can result in a person's name being removed from church records. If the infraction is grave enough, the church's governing first presidency, made up of the faith's president and his counselors, may, the handbook adds, direct that the membership record of a person who has misused personal data be annotated so as to bar him or her from holding future callings that come across privileged access to personal data. So I know that that seems fairly heavy-handed, but I love that. I love
Yeah, me
that the
too.
church is like, hey, data is so important and so sacred's not the right word for it, but private.
Yeah.
Don't mess with this. This could be an issue of, of your membership at stake.
Yeah. It makes me wonder because I feel like we haven't seen many articles of news coming through talking about these misuses of personal data, but maybe they've just kind of been handled locally or kind of on the down low. But I wonder if that is just a prevalent issue or if they just have decided with the prevalence of AI and data becoming more and more important, if they've just decided to make that shift.
I think that probably if I had to speculate, which of course we all know I'm going to do, I would speculate that because those infractions likely occur around political movements and the church needs to remain completely neutral as far as that. Otherwise, they risk being taxed or being put in a situation where it should seem that they should be taxed or that they're aiding in a particular political movement, etc., that the church has zero tolerance for that.
Fair. Have you
That would
seen
be my
anything like that
speculation.
in any ward of yours, like political messaging coming through from?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like with the last election cycle, there was a story around something like that.
Hmm.
Someone had like printed out the ward list or something like that. Or like you hear, and this has less to do with people's data, but like people doing things at the church that they shouldn't, that are politically like motivated, where it's like, come to our caucus meeting for the Republican caucus at the ward house. And they're like, nope,
Yeah.
very explicitly, that's not what's to be there. So, yeah, few and far between, to your point, but I think, yeah, if I had to speculate, that's why. And you shouldn't be misusing people's information. The obviously like wrong, egregious use of people's information. I don't care for that either. But if I had to speculate why they take such a serious tone at it, it's because it's been involved in either political or like social cause sort of stuff that could get the church in larger amounts of hot water.
Yeah,
So,
that makes sense.
yeah. Where would you like to go with stories?
I was interested by this story about how social media is shaping LDS men's views of masculinity for better or for worse. I really liked the intro to it, so I'm going to read that.
Please.
Sun-soaked family portraits, practical tips on healing from childhood trauma, advice for styling white jeans to achieve that perfect balance of casual and classic. Oh, and absolutely ripped pecs. Add these together, and you get the social media account of any number of male influencers making their name by codifying a new kind of masculinity online among Generation Z and millennial men. Some are homesteaders, others are entrepreneurs. Nearly all are podcasters. Love that.
Yep. That's
So are
me.
we? So
Shirts
are we
off,
read?
pecs out. I am shirts off, pecs out.
Absolutely. So does that mean that we are taking part in redefining masculinity?
You and I know. I think that defines masculinity by us. Are you kidding? Sorry.
Uh,
Sorry, the
yeah,
masculine movement. Anyone that looks at us. I should speak more for just me. I shouldn't be insulting to you. You're a man. You're a man's man.
I
Like
don't know
a
about that.
man. I no, I don't purport to be anything masculine.
Fair enough. This article was interesting because it kind of goes into this new wave of the masculine influencers, and there's a big part of it that is very positive, right? So these men who are kind of blending traditional forms of masculinity, so talking about being strong, being a leader, being a provider, a protector, and kind of blending them with current or more modern views of masculinity. And the article kind of goes into how this kind of speaks to LDS men because we have kind of been receiving that same messaging maybe longer than the contemporary world. Um, for example, in Latter-day Saint culture, much of the art, for instance, adopted by the church depicts Book of Mormon heroes as square-jawed, chiseled, just
Yeah, just shredded.
tanks, just
Yeah.
absolute tanks living in the wilderness off of berries, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
makes sense. Um, and then contrast that with the male leaders of the church who are these more frail, older, clean-shaven men who have always kind of been comfortable expressing emotion, often, tearing up during conference talks and things of that nature. So talking about how because of we've kind of already been living this blended view of masculinity, this movement really speaks to the LDS populace.
There are so many of these though, and this article, I don't even want to give the different like shows shout outs, at least not one of them, because I hate it. Anything I've ever seen from it, I'm just like, ugh, this is so we're like I don't get it. Like,
No,
you want us to feel our feelings? We're not going to. Like
yeah,
that is the attitude of one of the things that's sort of cited within this. I think that it's a fascinating conversation. I have heard so much around this. In fact, Chris West, who helps get like he helped that interview that we did with the folks from BYU about scripture study and how that is the thing that 12-year-olds can do that can make sure that they're still members of the church when they're 18. That's very poorly paraphrased, but I'm going to get him looking to help us get someone in to talk about masculinity because I think that it is a fascinating thing. Like that bravado, that machismo, I think is so gross, so like over the top that I can't get behind it. And I also I think that sometimes we get more and more of like, well, stupid men, and that's where some a a very limited amount, but some of like, well, men need to have the priesthood because that's the only thing that keeps them relevant and important is because, if women had the priesthood, then we wouldn't need men at all, right? Like there's this weird sort of thing around masculinity in the church. Well, we can't be too masculine, but we can't be too blah, blah. I would love to have a greater conversation around masculinity and around specifically this idea of maybe toxic masculinity.
yeah. I think it'd be interesting too because a lot of younger men, and it talks about in this article, feel like, and maybe part of it is just their perception. Maybe there's some truth to it, but feel more and more looked down upon by society, and so they're kind of clinging to these groups that talk about masculinity is a good thing, but maybe it needs to be different. But it also talks about the darker side of it, where you start off with a video that's just kind of talking about the need for vulnerability and how that's part of being masculine, and your algorithm can take you all the way down the spiral of these misogynistic influencers who have a lot of influence in kind of spreading their views of women and kind of wanting to retake their identity. It kind of is similar to kind of rhymes with the whole conversation with like a recent interview you had about Christian nationalism.
Yes. Yeah.
It's like this is our right and it's being taken away from us and we need to to reclaim it, rather than kind of adapting with the times. A friend of mine who I kind of not introduce you to, but talk to you about, runs a men's group and kind of talks about toxic masculinity and kind of redefining masculinity and becoming more vulnerable emotionally and stuff like that. So I definitely think there's a bigger
There's someone you
conversation
said
to
that
be
you know
had.
that does that?
Yeah, my friend that I talked to you about.
Tell the one that sent me an email, that guy?
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah.
done.
Yeah.
I'll talk to him.
There you go.
See, that's going to be a repentance via email
There you go.
episode. No, we'll get that episode happening. So Chris also, if he's listening, and I know he does, consider that assignment given. I'll also email him that. We've got time for a couple more news stories that we can get to. What ones in particular did you feel like was important that we get? You want to do the education in Panama?
I think that's a pretty quick one we can knock out.
Let's do it.
Yeah, the church back in, I believe it was February, made a donation in collaboration with an organization called School the World, to donate to aid in the construction of 7 classrooms. And it was in 3 kind of remote areas, 3 remote provinces of Comarca, Engabe, Bugle, and Panama in Central America. And so these 7 classrooms, along with what else was included with it? They also, where was that? Oh, it also included the construction of recreation parks for the children. So yeah, just great to see that this effort is continuing. One of the participants of it said, "Thanks to this effort and commitment, these classrooms represent learning opportunities that will transform lives. Education is the path to a better future." That was Ania Bogantes who said that. And this donation reaffirms that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saint has a commitment to serving the community and working for the well-being of society through access to quality education.
This one is quick. The water conservation project within the church, I think super cool. They are installing smart controllers. What's a smart controller? For watering at their meeting houses, 3,000 of them. They're saying that they don't like to call it the Jello Belt like we like to call it. They like to call it the
Right.
Pioneer Corridor.
Mhm.
But that they are not only installing these smart control systems, but also, and this is super cool, I want to do this in my own personal yard, have not yet, but like you can have little zone, like Bluetooth zone sensors. So if like one area is super wet, it'll just not allow the sprinklers in that particular area to go off. And if another area is dry, it'll have those go off. I need to do something like that in my yard. But in order to save millions of gallons of water, 500 millions of gallons of water over the first full year of implementation, the church has decided to do this. And that's not all. On historic Temple Square, they have planted 30% more trees in the landscaping, 35% less lawn at Temple Square, and as they're looking to reopen that again as well. It's just huge, and it's so funny to me because there is at my stake center, there is what feels like a mile-long park strip out. It is half a mile from the building, and there is this green as green as green park strip that I'm sure that the sprinkling system, because it's not that like you have your normal width of what a park strip is. I guarantee there is overspray on that all of the time, and why we haven't said, "Hello, steak, we're going to do this, and we're going to be socially conscious and environmentally aware and all of these things, and come learn about why we do this, and take the tax advantage from the county of which I live in," because I think that they'll give it even to businesses and organizations as well, and make it look better and save the people the time from mowing, like all of these things. It is so much to the point that I have thought about if I went by with my like pick and then I took some weed fabric, could I do that in enough time, short enough time that no one would know that I had done it and no one would even notice and I could save in that particular instance thousands of gallons of water just this year? Could I do that? I've thought about
I
it.
don't know. I haven't seen you do yard work, so I don't know
I'm
how
a
long it
I'm a
take you.
baller. I'm a monster at it.
A baller.
I am.
That's the first time that's ever been used to describe yard work.
I'm a lawn
Um,
baller.
but Richie, I'm sure the stake uses that park strip for
No,
almost every activity, right?
shut up. They literally, it is, and I've spoken with my stake president. I have to be careful about it because I also do work for him, and so there's some money coming my way. Not as it in not his church anything. It's not anything church influenced, but with his business, I do an event for his business every year. So I don't want to be too pushy about it. But in my first time
Right.
meeting him, I said, "Can we talk about xeriscaping and why we aren't doing it?" And he's like, "Well, that's an I'm like, "No, it's not an interesting thought. Let's just do it. I'll buy the
Yeah.
rocks. Let's do a little markdown on my tithing. I'll buy the everything. We'll just,
Mhm.
we'll just X that out across the line. He paid for that. It's done. There, done. Aren't we socially and environmentally conscious? Nope. Hasn't done it. Not yet.
Yeah. There's a church building on like Highland Drive in Holiday for those living in the Salt Lake Valley that it comes to mind with that same half mile, maybe mile long park strip that is just absolutely never used that I'd love to see
Ever.
this on. But something that's encouraging and interesting with that 500 million gallons that are estimated to be saved in the first year, that's with of the 3,000 that they are going to install, that's with 1,800 scheduled for this year. So with
Yes.
1,800 of those 3,000, an estimated 500 million gallons. So how many more next year when all 3,000 or whenever the all 3,000 are installed, and then how many in the years after that? So, yeah, and I think it was Bishop
I'll say.
what's his name? Yes. Who said we are present in most countries around the world, and every country has their own challenges. Could be the lack of resources, lack of water, for example. And so it's important as a church that we address this in its diversity, caring for the people in every country. So, kind of, I love that we're adapting our approach based on these areas that just don't have the capacity to have these insanely large park strips and green areas that could definitely be changed. So, hopefully, more changes like this in the near
So
future.
so I want to be weird for a second. Can I be
Do
weird
it.
with you for a second?
Go for it.
And you've got one more news story, right?
Yep.
Okay. So I want to be weird, and I want to ask you on a mandate. Can we go on a mandate?
Yeah.
Uh, I want to do this, and I want to
Uh,
report back about it. Hold on, everyone. We're fine. Not that there wouldn't be anything fine. Now I've gotten myself into it. Listen, here's what I'm saying. I want to do this with you, and I think that it would be particularly interesting to do with you. The There is a Salt Lake City bus tour about Black history in Utah. And
oh, yes, I did like, yeah, that was an interesting article.
that's all I'll say about it. There will be a link in the show notes. I don't know anything about it. I don't know if it was only for Black History Month, but I would love to be able to do that with you for several reasons. I think that you have an added perspective that I clearly do not. I think that I would love to be able to ask you questions about like, hey, how is this portrayed, and get sort of an awareness as far as all that goes. And I think I just like you and want to buy you lunch and go on a date with you. So, if you'll agree to my mandate, which you already did before I told you what we were doing, I will find out if that thing is still going on or if we need to wait till next February. But I can't imagine, a couple hours long, we'll spend the afternoon and we'll find out about Black history in Utah. Because if I'm being honest, I don't know but very little about it.
Fair enough. I'm absolutely down. I was on the edge of my seat. For anyone who thinks maybe that this was planned beforehand and like, oh, Richie's just going to present it during the episode. No, I had absolutely no idea that was coming. Also, I loved your description the other day with our meeting when we actually finally met up at Snow Basin and how
Uh-huh.
awkward you felt. I didn't feel any of that awkwardness
Oh,
that you
really?
felt. So no, well, so I saw you and I had in my head already, he's busy, he's doing this event. I'm gonna say hi real quick and that's it. And then to hear what was going on in your brain on the other end was entertaining. So
Well,
thank you for that.
I felt so bad, and I always am super sensitive. My wife will tell me, "Toughen up, pussy." She'll tell me that I need to be like a little bit less sensitive about stuff because I always feel like it's like, oh man, he knows, and I got to be this for him, but I've also got to do this for that, and so I'm just like, I'm glad you were entertained, and I'm glad we're going on a mandate together. I'll find out if that's still
Woohoo!
going on. We could do like an Instagram takeover and do all sorts of stories throughout the day. And other people, would
Sounds
you be all
amazing.
right if other people join us too? I'm not trying to
Yeah.
avoid it. Yeah, cool. That'd be fun. It's an outing. Look at this. We're doing outings now. What is this
Our
show
first
available
cultural
upon?
hall outing.
Well, we've done them before. You're not my first. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
never mind.
You're not my first. We did the art museum. We did that a couple of years ago, the Minerva Teicher thing at the Art Museum. And way back in the day, you have to be probably a lifer with Pioneer stock to remember when we did the live episode at Sammy's Pie Shakes down in Provo. That place doesn't even exist anymore.
Yeah, I'm not a lifer enough to remember that, but
Yeah.
more to come, hopefully, in the
Yeah.
future.
A quick aside on that. If you would like to sponsor the Cultural Hall's old episodes, we are going to start publishing our old episodes from the very beginning at a more rapid rate than what we do our current episodes. So eventually we'll get caught up. If you would like to be a sponsor of that, send me a message, contact@theculturalhall.com. It'll end up being about $100 a month because we have to pay for a whole platform to be able to host that stuff. So that's where that's coming from. Contact@theculturalhall.com. You will get messages that are up to 60 seconds long about your business or your side gig as a travel agent, for instance, or whatever the thing could be. Contact@theculturalhall.com. Take us home with the last story for this news.
Last story is about perfectionism. I think this is something we hear about a lot. So there's an interesting study led by Justin Dyer, who's a professor of religious education at BYU, who realized that there hadn't really been anything studied about the effects of, or who exhibits more toxic perfectionism, Latter-day Saints or those who are not. So he led a team to study over 2,000 teens and young adults, roughly half of them being members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the other half not, and found that 12% of Latter-day Saints who were surveyed experience high levels of toxic perfectionism, which was similar to those who are of other religions, which was between 11 and 13%. But 20% of atheist or agnostic people and 27% of former Latter-day Saints were on the high end of toxic perfectionism. So kind of an interesting study. It's hard for me to like read this and not feel like maybe something about how they were surveyed was maybe a little bit biased, being a BYU study, but it was interesting, the conclusions that they came to.
So this researcher is the
also-
same researcher that we talked about the scripture study with. They've done a bunch of different topics. Justin Dyer is one of the gentlemen in that episode that we recently published about that. And I asked him point blank, I'm like, of course, isn't a BYU study going to not say that BYU and or members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints are more than all that? And it's worth a listen to be able to hear his response to how they gather that information. But it does seem narratively within the church that the be ye therefore perfect is what we're sort of called to do. There's far more of a stress on being perfect. Maybe not toxically, but certainly a stress on it than in other places.
And so I think because of that, a lot of people would assume that that would be the outcome. But he kind of pointed to certain beliefs, like if you believe in the theology of God loves you and you have infinite worth, then that level of toxic perfectionism maybe isn't present. And then a point that was interesting is, with the contrasting levels of high perfectionism between active members of the church and former members of the church, it's not necessarily to suggest that they became toxically perfectionist people after leaving the church, but that high levels of perfectionism may cause a decline in religiosity and weaken spiritual connections. And that makes sense to me. Like, if just because of how you're hardwired, because of how your parents raised you, if you feel this pressure to be perfect and it's to a toxic level, that could certainly make someone feel further from God, feel shame in church, and kind of contribute to, not cause, because there's rarely just one thing that causes someone to leave the church, but could certainly contribute to that desire to leave. So
Sure.
I found that to be interesting.
Yeah. And at one point, like, I can remember a distinct time in elementary school where I was like, well, listen, if I can't be perfect, I'm not buying in the game at all.
Yeah.
I'm not doing this at all. Forget it. It was like a classroom earning, classroom bucks or something like that. But like
Right.
I missed the chance to get one. I was like, forget it. I'm out. I don't need to
done.
do this anymore. Spending all my classroom bucks at that point. If I can't be the best, I'm out. I'm out,
Yeah.
I said.
I think we all experience that to some degree, well, if no sin is, if no unclean thing can dwell with God, then what's the point in trying, because I will never be, perfect. So, but that's where Christ comes in.
Right. And where Satan gets you.
Exactly.
We hope that this episode has nourished and strengthened your body.
That if you were not well enough to listen this week, that you'll be well enough to listen next week.
and that when the time comes, you will be able to travel home in safety. In the meantime, Chris at Alpine Lakes Travel, Debbie Wanless, Chocolate Cake Bites Podcast, and the Tiger, with a U, will be saving a seat for you
On the back row
of the
Cultural Hall.
Save me a seat, it's sure to be neat. On the back row, we really gotta go on the Cultural Hall show.